Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on Machines Like Me by Ian McEwan. Machines Like Me by Ian McEwan takes place in an alternative 1980s London, following Charlie, who is struggling with employment and secretly loves his next-door neighbor, Miranda. When Charlie comes into money, the first thing he does is buy a realistic humanoid robot named Adam. With Miranda's help, Charlie crafts Adam's personality, and what emerges is a near-perfect human with thoughts and feelings. Machines Like Me explores a world on the brink of collapse, and while Adam is learning to become human, Charlie and Miranda are discovering their own moral boundaries and what it means to be human themselves. I'm honestly not quite sure how I feel about this book, you guys. There's aspects of this book that I really enjoyed, that I really appreciated, and just certain thematic things, if you will, that I just really enjoyed. And yeah, I really like the characters. And yeah, for starters, this is actually my second Ian McEwan book. I have previously read Ian McEwan's Atonement, and I freaking love Atonement, you guys. Atonement is like one of my top favorite books of all time, easily probably in my top 10. So yeah, I've not read anything else by Ian McEwan since Atonement, and I've always wanted to read more from him, and I saw this book and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give this book a shot because it sounds interesting. It sounds like something kind of right up my alley, because I do really enjoy a good story about like the future and about robots and whatnot, but this book does not take place in the future. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I did struggle with this book because there were elements that I really enjoyed and liked, but then other moments that I was just kind of like, this feels like it's dragging a little bit. What's the point of this? What's the point of that? Blah blah blah, you know. And yeah, I'll kind of get through some of my questions and concerns as I get through this video. But yeah, I mean, overall, what's going on in this book? I mean, it's about two humans who come into possession of a realistic humanoid robot, and it's this journey between these three characters that eventually kind of merges into this weird, awkward love triangle. and this whole book is about these three characters learning to become human, even though you have two people who are already humans, but they themselves are struggling to understand what it means to be human and how to better improve themselves and to better improve their lives. And then yeah, you have the robot who is literally trying to learn to become human himself by watching their interactions, watching how they speak and move and their interests and whatnot. So this book definitely just explores a lot of really interesting ideas and issues with this crazy love triangle that kind of forms between these three characters and whatnot. And yeah, the novel is exploring, trying to understand what is love, trying to understand what is life, trying to understand moral boundaries. That's a big thing in this book that's quite heavy, is the whole idea of moral boundaries. When are you willing to cross a moral boundary and whatnot? When is it okay? When is it right? When is it wrong? And the book is also very heavily focused on just the day by day of life, in some sense. The day by day of just living perhaps a rather mundane existence, living in a world that doesn't particularly really care about your personal struggles or your personal issues or whatever it may be. So that's a big thing going on in this book too, just really diving into that mundane day by day of average life, I suppose. And I guess some of my issue with this book as well, before I kind of get into some of the bigger things I want to head into, this book can be very deep, and what I mean by that, it can get pretty psychological and philosophical, and yeah, I never majored in philosophy. I never majored in psychology. So there's a lot of things going on in this particular book that I was like, what the hell is going on? What exactly is Ian McEwan trying to say? Especially just because Adam, the robot Adam, he just says some crazy things that are very deep and psychological and philosophical, and you're supposed to really kind of read into what he's saying, and what he's saying usually just has to deal with the greater grand scope of life and what it means to be human and whatnot. And in the meantime, the human characters, Charlie and Miranda, there goes Adam kind of saying whatever he's saying that's really psychological and philosophical, and the two human characters are like, what? Like, they're trying to comprehend themselves, and me, the reader, I was trying to comprehend a lot of times what these big philosophical, psychological things were. This book is very heavy on, like, debate, for instance, just very big, heavy topics about life and death and what it means to be human, and it's the type of book that I feel like you can't just casually read, if that makes sense. You can't just casually read this book. You do need to think as you're reading this book, and that's either going to be a hindrance for you. It just depends on you as your own personal reader. How do you like to read? Do you just like to casually read a book, or do you like books that you do need to sit and ponder and think about it, as you conclude a chapter, and put the book down and think to yourself, what did I just read? What was this particular chapter trying to tell me? Because this is definitely that type of book. But before I do get into a few of my other issues with this book, let me kind of touch on the characters really quickly. I mentioned earlier, I really did enjoy these characters, and I appreciated kind of their function and role within this novel. I guess starting with Adam the robot, I really liked him as a character. He has his moments of being, oddly humorous and oddly quirky when I don't think he means to be that way. It's kind of unintentional humor coming from him because, he's a robot and he takes everything very literally and logically and rationally. So things come out more humorous than what is probably intended from him. But I liked Adam. He's essentially starting life, reborn, but as a grown-looking man, and he's a blank, fresh slate. He is taking in his environment, taking in everything that Charlie and Miranda are telling him and teaching him, and he is learning off of them. He is learning what it means to be human. He's questioning. That's the big thing that he's constantly doing in this book. He is constantly questioning every little thing. It makes him like a child, because when you're a child, that's all you sit and do. You're sitting there asking questions because you don't understand, and that's what he's doing as a robot. He is questioning. He's questioning. Why does Charlie behave like this? Why does Miranda behave like this? Why do Charlie and Miranda lie? What is the point of a lie and whatnot? Just little things like that he is coming to understand. And that's what what is going on with Adam over the course of this novel, that even though he's a robot, it's like, is there something kind of going on? Is there some sort of little glitch that he's becoming more than just a robot? Because it seems like he is developing more human feeling and personality over the course of the novel. So that's something you have to question over the course of this novel as you're reading it. Where is Adam kind of mentally? Is he developing a human brain capacity, or is it all wires and numbers, if that makes sense? And then I also really liked Charlie. Charlie, he's like in his early 30s. He's struggling with employment. He kind of just hops around from job to job and can't really stay at any one single job. And he just kind of makes money as it kind of comes to him and uses it all up. And his biggest purchase is Adam. It's like as soon as he gets a little bit of money, he goes a little nuts and he buys this very expensive robot, which he probably shouldn't have done. But I liked Charlie. I think there's something that you can probably relate to some degree. He's perhaps not the most likable, but I think you can relate to him and sympathize with him. And you do get the idea that he's lived a life of struggle. He's very cynical about everything. And then, yeah, here comes Miranda. Miranda's his next door neighbor. Miranda is quite a bit younger than Charlie. Like I said, Charlie's in his early 30s, and Miranda, I think she's supposed to be maybe 18 or 19 years old, so yeah, she's quite a bit younger than Charlie, but yeah, she's very pretty and intelligent and well-spoken, and just she's everything that Charlie really likes. And yeah, Miranda has a very interesting backstory that you learn over the course of this novel. Her backstory really is kind of this nexus point of where a lot of the big major events that go down in this book happen. It's all very centralized on her character, the things that Adam and Charlie do in regards to helping her and helping her get through some personal things, and you know, whatever her backstory is, which you learn. So I liked the main three characters. I mean, that's it. That's kind of it for this novel. I mean, there is some other characters sporadically introduced throughout this novel, but yeah, Adam, Charlie, and Miranda, that is your big three, and you spend the entire time with them. I mean, there's whole sequences where you're just in a room. You know, you're just in a room with these characters, and they're all talking, and they're all debating about these big, deep, philosophical, psychological things. So yeah, this book does have moments of being very fast-paced and having a lot of action, but at the end of the day, it's also just a book that it really takes its time with the narrative, and like I said, it's a thinking man's book. You really got to think with this book, and you really got to get into the nitty-gritty of these characters and this world and whatnot. So let's get to one of my biggest issues with this book. Let's get to the world building, because if you recall, at the top of this review, when I was doing my quick plot summary, I mentioned that this book takes place in an alternative 1980s London, and this is a big issue for a lot of reviewers, I've noticed, because I went on Goodreads and I was looking at a lot of reviews about this book, and a lot of people kind of had the same issue and complaints like me, or rather maybe a curiosity. It might not so much be a complaint, but just a curiosity and maybe a lack of understanding on our part, because we have no idea why Ian McEwan has done what he's done with this narrative. But Ian McEwan, he sets this in a alternative version of 1980s London, and the big question as you're reading this book is, it's kind of like, why set this book in 1980s London, an alternative 1980s London? Why not set this book in the future, you know, the near future at least? It's just such an it's such a curiosity why Ian McEwan set this book in the setting that he did. I mean, there are some interesting things in regards to that, because a big point in this novel, the reason why there are robots to begin with, is because Alan Turing is not dead. Alan Turing is responsible for developing these robots. Because if you know your history, the real Alan Turing, he committed suicide in like the 1950s. So that's kind of what this novel is almost exploring. It's kind of this, well, what if Alan Turing had not committed suicide? What if Alan Turing had lived? Could he have made robots? And other than Alan Turing's name being a big name in this novel, yeah, Margaret Thatcher is very heavy in this book as kind of a presence in the media. Margaret Thatcher still being the Prime Minister in this alternate reality. And yeah, it's names like that. It's names from the 80s that are familiar. And then something else about this novel, it's like, even though it does take place in the 80s, nothing about this novel really felt like I was in the 80s, if that makes sense. Because, of course, there were names mentioned, big names of the 80s were mentioned, but other than that, Ian McEwan doesn't really do a good job of telling you, hey, we're in the 80s. He doesn't really describe hair, he doesn't describe clothing, he doesn't really describe much of anything that firmly lets you know that this is the 80s, because at times it did seem like we were in the future. You know, at times I felt like we were in the future, and I would have to keep reminding myself that this is the 1980s, you know? So really, I almost feel like the point of this novel was like an excuse for Ian McEwan just to have Alan Turing in the book, if that makes sense. It almost just feels like this whole book is an excuse just to simply throw Alan Turing in there and kind of have this what if scenario. So yeah, that's a big just question mark people have about this book. Why set it in an alternative 1980s, especially when nothing particularly really feels like the 80s. Things feel more futuristic, the technology feels more futuristic. And this book, if you're all caught up on, you know, modern history, current history that's going on the media and the news right now, this book is definitely very, 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 very heavy commentary on modern current society. Yeah, things going on in the US, things going on especially in the UK, since this is taking place in the UK. Yeah, there's a lot of familiar things and topics and debates that are present in this book that you're reading this and you're thinking, oh, that's going on right now. We're going through something like that right now. So yeah, depending on you as a reader, that may either be something that interests you. If you're interested in this book tackling current day commentary, you may like that and appreciate that. But if you're someone who just doesn't care about a very heavily political book, then you might want to steer clear of this book, because this book is definitely very heavy on kind of current politics, and it has a message that it's trying to say, essentially. It's just setting it in the 1980s, but really it's a commentary on what's happening in the world now. So overall, I did like this book. There were certain things that I really grasped onto and I enjoyed and appreciated. I liked the characters, but then yeah, it was just other little things, yeah, like what's the point of the setting exactly? And yeah, it also being overly philosophical at times that I couldn't totally understand, you know, certain things going on. But other than that, I mean, I did really enjoy this book. I'm glad I finally got around to another Ian McEwan novel. Atonement, I definitely still prefer Atonement. I don't think Ian McEwan will ever write anything better than Atonement. I just don't imagine him ever doing such a thing. But yeah, I definitely recommend this book. If you are a fan of Ian McEwan, if you've read all of his books in the past, this is probably a must for you. I also recommend this book if you're like me, if you like a good story about robots and kind of the rise in technology and whatnot. Yeah, if you like something like Westworld, if you like the video game Detroit Become Human, if you like the graphic novel Alex and Ada, if you like the movie Ex Machina, just any sort of thing involving robots, if that's your thing, you'll probably appreciate this and really get into it and get into those messages and themes and whatnot. So you guys, that's it for my review of Machines Like Me. In the comments below, have you guys read Machines Like Me? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Just let me know your thoughts down below. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.